we're here today at Marsden Grotto, which for people who haven't seen it, check out the website. It's an incredible underground, in a cliff restaurant here in South Tyneside. And I'm here with Jody and Andrew from Ad Hoc Academic. Thanks for joining us. So firstly, tell us why you've chosen to come here today.
You go.
This is your story.
Okay. I think, well, myself and Andrew, we met probably not in here, but about 100 metres that way in the car park. We didn't actually know each other, and my partner shot Andrew's wedding, and I stayed in touch, and we decided to go for a walk just after Christmas. And we did, with our families, our little girls played together, and we were walking in the car park just above where we are now, and talked about a business idea. Andrew didn't know it at the time. I was actually quizzing him, and he actually aced it. So it was from that point I knew that I was going to work with Andrew. We did actually come down here, but it was so busy and so popular we couldn't get a seat. So we actually went back out. But that's why we chose here, because it's kind of symbolic for us, symbolic for me, that we met here, just above here, and it's where it started.
Give us a bit of a sort of an idea about what Ad Hoc is.
Yeah. Well, it was a pretty exciting moment in January 2016 where we sat down after this conversation, and Jody had picked up the phone following on from that in a more professional capacity, and asked if I was interested in getting involved. And at that time I was running a marketing consultancy, so we were talking about me getting involved from that perspective, but that quickly got to the point where I was all in terms of Ad Hoc and what we were going to do. So we sketched out on a piece of paper this vision for Ad Hoc Academic, and that sketched paper doesn't look a million miles to where we're at right now, which is a great sense of pride really in kind of understanding and being able to articulate a pretty simple proposition. So that proposition is, we're on-demand academic workforce for higher and further education. So our search engine allows academics to search, match and connect with temporary academic resource, and we allow them to do that in minutes rather than, let's say, currently in hours or days that they would be expecting. So that initial vision that we had back then has now been realised in a product that's in market, and we have 3 customers using that product.
So neither of you have a background in software.
No.
There'll be people at home watching this who might have a brilliant app idea or an idea about some sort of tech or software that's really going to change the world, but they haven't got that know-how of what they need to do to get there. Tell us a little bit about sort of that process for yourselves, what you had to do to ensure that you protected that intellectual property, and also that decision-making process on finding the right people to help you create the software.
I think what was key for us is that we were plugged into the right people. So I knew that as a team we could pretty much handle anything, but what we needed to do was find the right people outside of us. So being in the North East, we were quite lucky to be plugged into the software centre, which allowed us to get a wireframe developed, and was funding through the EU, which allowed us to do that for free as well. Business Innovation Centre as well, so they were able to plug us into the right networks and give us free business advice as well, even just something as simple as a place to sit, and that allowed for free, which allowed us to develop these things. So in terms of the software side, getting access to the innovation fund through the BIC allowed us to put out to tender for somebody to develop our wireframe, our what's the word I'm looking for?
Application.
Yeah. I was going to say MVP, that's why, for our MVP, but we needed a wireframe developed, so we got funding through Software Centre for that, which we then went out to tender for free through the BIC for somebody to develop that for us, and that's how we met Dan, our developer. And he won the tender. We got some really strong applications came through.
I'm glad you mentioned surrounding yourself with the people who can actually make it happen, because I think it's not a sense of naivety, because you could have this massive amount of self-belief. I think we've both got that in the right quantities, so we're not so naive we think we can solve every problem ourselves. But when we do come up against problems, we have surrounded ourselves, and everybody can do that, because you do know, and you can find somebody within your own sphere, and then maybe somebody outside of that. But it's a skill that you kind of definitely need to build up, and that's a real core skill of an entrepreneur, or somebody who's got to start a business. And I think we've just exercised that, and every opportunity that we've had to go find somebody who knows that subject area matter, subject area expertise better than us, they're the right person to do it, not us. Yeah, and I wanted to double back on your question with regard to the intellectual property, because I know you kind of asked that as part of the same question. And I guess in some respects, there's very clear patents that can be put on products, but with a product like ours, cloud-based, software as a service platform, our key weapon is speed to market, being the best at what we do, gaining the trust of our valued customers, getting them on board. They love us, and then that's our protection against the market. I don't really think there's a way in which we can, patent, cloud-based platforms within the internet. We're doing search. We do it really, really well within our platform and connecting those two sides, two different marketplaces that we serve. But really, it's like speed to market and getting those customers on board and really valuing the product that's going to protect us.
So, where are you guys now? What's your current position, and what's the sort of near future looking like?
I think it's just working through our user experience, making sure that our users engage properly, making sure that our customers are happy, making sure that we're onboarding people and getting a team in place. I think that's key, making sure we get key members of our team in, so it's not just me and Andrew. There will be key people that we employ around us. Yeah. So yeah, that's for me for early next year. That's my.
That's really where we're at right now.
So what does sort of growth and then success look for you? What does it look like for you guys?
We are the largest database of temporary academic staff and professionals in the world.
Talk us through how you're able to sort of maintain that equilibrium between the two of you.
Well, I don't know what the secret is. We don't work in the same room, so maybe that's part of the secret. I don't know. We haven't tried that one yet. No, I'm based in Salford and Jody's based in Sunderland. We speak, I don't know, formally once a day, as in this is what we need to get done. And then we speak 100 times informally.
More than anybody else in my phone.
Exactly. So, I think that's the dynamic. We're genuinely excited when stuff happens. So you want to pick the phone, you want to send that text, you want to send the email saying, "Hey, this has happened." But make no mistake, it is not all that kind of super duper positivity. It is really, really so. It's beyond what I'd ever imagined. People had told me this was going to happen, and I kind of didn't believe it. I just thought, no, I'm pretty steady. It will all be just kind of like, controllable, manageable.
And I didn't realise how much of a journey we've been. I think one of the key things that's happened is we've not been on a low one at the same point. so that helps. So if I'm feeling a bit like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? And Andrew will just be, and you don't even have to say that. It's almost instinctual than anything else. He would just be like, come on, let's do this, let's sort this. And I'll do the same for him, vice versa. So, but I think one of the key things is we celebrate everything, don't we? We are quite excitable people, so if there's the smallest little thing, we're both like, yes, like that's awesome win, and we're on to the next level and pushing, and that's how I feel. And also I think we're both on the same level with, in terms of like work-life balance. We both have families, we both appreciate that. We both have young families, so I think understanding and respecting that boundary, but also knowing how flexible, it's not a 9 to 5, not a 9 to 5. Yeah. If you want a 9 to 5, don't do this job. But it's understanding that there is, I get up at 5:30, I start work, I then take my daughter to school, I start work again. So it's about being flexible, it's about working around your family, and I think we both appreciate that, and we're both flexible with where we work. So we speak at 9, 10 at night, but that's because we choose to work that way, and I think that really helps, because we can push things through faster and we communicate really well. And I think that's one of the key things, just communication. We both like to talk. So.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. it really does work well. It's working for us. And obviously we will never be able to rediscover this experience as a solo entrepreneur, because we are part of a team now, so it will always be that way. So we won't have a comparison. We won't say, oh well, it will be different if But yeah, I do, people, what I really admire is when I do see those people who set up on their own, I have the greatest admiration, because who is that person that you turn to, like a la your point, where, and it seems to work like that, where there is this kind of, if I'm feeling slightly down, you'll just pick me up, and vice versa. But if you don't have that, it's like, who do you go to? And I think that's another part of that network thing, is to get somebody in place. I mean, it could be a mentor, it doesn't even have to be something as formal, like just who is your go-to person who's going to give you that little pick-me-up. It will be okay, it's just a moment in time, like power through that.
So both of you have had careers before and worked before this, and you also have supportive family as well. But that's not to say taking this step wasn't a risk. With having families as well, there would have been an extra level of perhaps fear behind that. Talk to us a little bit about sort of how you knew it was right to take that leap.
I think I don't really know where to start with. You've got to have a very understanding partner, which we both do. And I think it's about setting parameters for yourself and being sensible and understanding at what point you have to say no because you can't anymore, and planning. So journey's so exciting, it's kind of like a drug. You kind of want more as you go, because the rewards of being an entrepreneur are far outweigh any job that I've ever had, working in any of the other careers that I've ever had, and I've only been doing this year. So it is about taking that step and looking at what you have and what do you need and what do you have and what can you do without, and working back. So
you've touched on sort of having a business and having a family. I was wondering sort of whether it really is like that analogy, having a business is like having another child, and how it is you're able to balance those, keep that family life, social life and business life, or do you just have a business life, or do you have a business life and a family life and no social life?
It's such a good question, and I think if you take about my approach to parenthood, you are the person who's setting the example for your kids, and you need to teach them the way in which to get by in this world. So what you want to do is manage your time in such a way as that everybody's getting the fair share of that amount of time. And it's a very selfish thing doing what we're doing, because you have to dedicate yourself to the business as the business requires. You can almost remove yourself from that. But if you do so too much, then it's to the detriment of your family, and you've got to be really careful of that. So I'm conscious that when it is time for my family and for my children, that I'm giving the time and that is required. The reality is, it's very difficult to stop thinking about this thing which you are so passionate about, and it is kind of constantly going in the background. So it is a challenge, and I think it would be strange if you had this idea, ad hoc academic in our world, and you were so passionate about it, and then you just could switch it off and on like a switch. It's not quite that simple, but I think when you're doing that, you just need to be open and honest. The times that I really drop myself in it is when I'm not keeping my family informed of what's happening, places I need to be, and we all do that from time to time. But that's the key, is to keep everybody kind of in the picture of what's happening, and I think that kind of works then. When people talk about having to sell your product,
yes,
that always sounds scary, and there's a reason for that, and that is because you're walking into rooms where you don't know if somebody's actually that excited about buying your product.
Yes.
People buying your products, a whole different scenario. Somebody takes a look at what you're doing, likes the look of it, and then really wants to communicate with you. That's a whole different scenario.
So this is a really interesting point, right? So there's a lot of great software out there, world-changing stuff even, and it fails to get to market because it's poorly marketed. So Andrew, your background is in marketing.
No pressure. We should have no pressure whatsoever.
So you can see where I'm going with this. Well, talk us through how you've gone about marketing your product, if at all. Are people sort of organically coming through? Is it search engine optimization? Have you got Facebook ads out? Are you targeting LinkedIn adverts at particular execs? What's bringing people in, and how are you doing it? You know, as I say, there'll be a lot of people who perhaps have ideas about getting software to market but won't know where to start about marketing that.
So we've got two sides to our market. So let's deal with one of them, which will be our professionals and temporary academic staff, which are the candidates. On the other side, you've got the universities. So we know who all of those people are because we know every single university in the United Kingdom. We want to be the evangelists and the area experts on how those institutions go about managing and using intelligence to manage their temporary resource. So we know who they are and we want to create relationships with those people, and we think we can do that by referral, by getting to know these people, attending the right events, and you know, building our network up. So that's kind of that side dealt with. On the other side, when you've got the candidates, so we're talking about people who work in institutions already, so that would be PhD students, that would be existing temporary resource, that would be, you know, any number of people. And then you've got the professionals, people like myself who had a career, you know, and still do, working in marketing, but, you know, with my current hat on as ad hoc. We want to speak to those people about giving something back to education. So we're running a campaign which is really trying to introduce the concept that if you ever thought that it might be a good idea to give something back to education, then you need to pursue that, and you need to get on board with Ad Hoc Academic and remove that closed shop of the university world, because they're looking for these people. They don't know that you exist, and that's where we're running it. So that's who we're looking for, and that's kind of our overarching vision of how we're going to attract these people. And you're right in the routes to market that you mentioned there. Referral is going to be our number one route, because we've got some candidates in our database right now who obviously get the proposition because they've joined. So we want those people to go and tell their friends about it because they think it's a great idea. And the way we do that is make it a great experience for them, and then they'll do the, you know, that kind of mega viral kind of campaign without they having to think about it. We've then got the spreading the message wider than that, so search engine marketing, SEO, Facebook, social of any nature, getting that message out there. And from a marketer's perspective, it's the most exciting opportunity because there are simply so many different routes to market that we could go down. The challenge is actually narrowing that down. Where do we start? Yeah. Get specific rather than trying to boil the ocean. So we're just going to recruit everybody into our candidate database. That is not going to happen overnight. Mm-hmm. So that's my biggest challenge. It's just like getting specific.
So does that mean, you know, obviously with it being more specific, you can be more targeted with your marketing budget, or, you know, should one assume that getting software to market is going to be a particularly expensive venture, it's going to take a lot of marketing? Has that been more expensive than you thought, or have you been able to?
No, because we've been extremely prudent with our budget, our non-existent budget. No, we do have some budget because we've been lucky to work with a lot of people around us who want to provide that because they believe in what we're doing as well. But what we haven't done is gone out there and just like placed a massive bet on one particular route. Mm-hmm. What we've done is, and this is, you know, classic kind of agile new startup kind of territory, which is to iterate, which is let's do a little test, let's see if this is working. So we know that if we advertise very specific positions within universities, we get a way better conversion rate on the inbound stuff, you know, communicating through Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, for example. And those routes really do work because you're looking for the influencers in those places to then say, you know, pass that message onto their networks. So using a bit of virality as well, but certainly not busting any budgets. And I think that may scare people in the entrepreneurial world. How do I face these big challenges? But the way you do it is don't spend a lot of money doing anything in particular, just spend small amounts of money testing. If you see some results, then you can kind of start to place bigger bets on that particular route. And that's how we've done it.
Being clever.
Being clever, yeah.
Well, at least Andrew has.
So at the moment, your business is very cloud-based. It allows you to work in lots of different places, but you've touched on the fact that you're starting to look at growing a team. Is that going to be based up here in the Northeast? And if not, where? Or is everybody going to be working remotely? Or how do you sort of plan?
Yeah, I think Well, it kind of depends on who we find and where they are, and if it's something that where we would need the physical office, because right now we don't need a physical space. We can both work from home or in the ad hoc places that we've set up. But if it was somebody that was working closely with Andrew, then it would make more sense to have a physical space in Manchester. And if it was somebody working closely with me, then up here, we're just going to have to be agile and see what happens.
I agree. Yeah, the North East certainly feels like our spiritual home. You know, having met here, a lot of the opportunity that we've managed to surround ourselves with has been based in the North East. So you certainly get that sense. But yeah, we'll be where the business takes us in terms of what's sensible about those decisions. And again, this is something that the entrepreneurs need to think about: is where is that skill, where is the resource? And the North East actually has presented itself as somewhere that does have quite, a lot of that skill set that you're looking for, a lot of the talent, and there's a lot of talented people up here. So if that remains to be the case, we'll be here because the talent's here, not because it, kind of great for us.
And a lot of tech hubs as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Newcastle have just got money to launch theirs, and someone's got a great tech hub as well. So it seems to be a little bit of a mecca at the moment. So we're right in the middle of it. I'm happy with that.
Well, Jody, Andrew, thank you so much for coming in.
It's been a pleasure. It really has.
An absolutely fantastic story. And yeah, thanks for your time. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Cheers. Is that us? Sorted. That's brilliant.
Dunk it.